So, she rejected you, and you disappeared. No explanations, no drama, just silence. Most people would call that giving up. But what if I told you that silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy? Welcome back to Man of Substance. And today, we're going to flip the script on everything you've been taught about rejection. This video isn't about getting her back. It's not about revenge. It's about understanding what actually happens in her mind when you vanish after she turns you down. Because here's the truth most men don't realize. Rejection doesn't end the story. It starts a new one, inside her head. See, the moment you walk away without protest, without bitterness, without that pathetic just checking in message, she doesn't feel powerful, she feels something else, confused, and then curious, and then maybe a little unsettled. Why? Because 90% of guys don't do that. They linger, they chase, they try to prove their worth. But the rare man who knows how to disappear, he's the one who leaves a mark. She starts wondering, was he even that into me? Did I misread something? Why hasn't he said anything? Her ego was expecting validation. Instead, she's met with absence. And trust me, a man's silence can echo louder than his words ever could. You see, when you disappear, it's not about playing hard to get. It's about choosing not to be easy to forget. That's the difference. That's power. And that's what we're unpacking in this video. We're going inside her psychology, piece by piece, to show you what really happens when you remove your energy from the table. 1. She thought you'd chase. You didn't. When a woman rejects a man, she often assumes one thing. He's still going to chase her. Not because she's cruel, not because she's manipulative, but because that's what most guys do. Think about it. Most men don't walk away easily. They stick around. They keep trying to prove they're worthy. They double text. They become more available, more eager, more desperate. That's the pattern she's used to. So when you do the opposite, when you don't chase, it instantly breaks the script in her mind. And that silence, it's louder than begging. See, rejection isn't always final in her world. Sometimes she says no just to see how much you're willing to work for her. Not necessarily because she's interested, but because it feeds her ego. It reassures her that she's desired. So when you disappear without resistance, it creates a mental gap. Where did he go? Now here's where it gets interesting. When you don't chase, she starts to feel like she lost something. You've flipped the roles. You've gone from the one being rejected to the one who's now rejecting her with your absence. And that kind of shift hits hard, especially for women who are used to attention sticking around. Most women don't reject a man and immediately forget about him. They watch what he does next. They expect him to linger in her orbit. But when you do the one thing she wasn't expecting, you vanish, her mind starts racing. Let's say you approached her, showed interest, and she politely turned you down. She figured you'd DM her later, maybe like a few stories, maybe pop back up a week later asking how she's been. Instead, you say nothing. You disappear. No social media presence, no friendly check-in, no lingering attention. You leave her with a clean exit. And suddenly, you're the one she's thinking about. Why? Because you showed value by walking away. You showed strength by not chasing. And most importantly, you made her realize you didn't need her validation to begin with. That alone changes everything in her perception of you. 2. Her ego takes the first hit. Let's be honest. Most rejections don't come from a place of hate or even disinterest. A lot of the time, it's a soft pushback. Maybe she's unsure. Maybe she wants to keep you around but not too close. Either way, when a woman rejects a man, she often expects him to still stick around in some way. Why? Because that response protects her ego. It reassures her that she's still desired, that she's still in control. It's not about being cold-hearted. It's just human nature. Attention feels good, and for many women, rejection isn't meant to cut the guy off completely. It's often meant to keep him circling, just in case she changes her mind later. So when you disappear after being rejected, it hits her where she didn't expect it, her ego. She was ready for a reaction, a follow-up, a little more effort, something that confirms, yes, he still wants me. But when there's nothing, When you don't look back, don't explain yourself, don't even seem bothered, that silence feels like a slap to the part of her that needed to feel chosen. Now her ego isn't being fed, and that creates tension within her. She starts asking herself quiet questions she won't say out loud. Why didn't he try again? Was I not that attractive? Did I misread the situation? And here's where it gets deeper. Even if she was never really interested in you to begin with, she still wanted to feel wanted. That feeling, that sense of being in control, is what the ego thrives on. When you take that away by walking without flinching, it's not just rejection she gave you, it's rejection she's now receiving, just in a different form. And the human ego, male or female, doesn't like that. She may not even want you, but suddenly your silence makes her feel like you're the one pulling away. You went from the guy asking for a chance to the man who doesn't even care anymore. That shift can bruise the ego more than the rejection itself. What's powerful here is that you didn't do anything to her. You simply didn't do what she expected. You removed your energy, and that alone can trigger a quiet storm inside her, because now she doesn't have the validation or attention she was unconsciously counting on to stay in control. And whether she shows it or not, that silence shook something. 3. Silence feels like rejection to her. Here's something most men don't realize. When you go silent after she turns you down, it doesn't feel neutral to her. It feels like rejection. And not just any kind of rejection. It's the kind that flips the emotional script on her. Let's make this clear. Women are used to being pursued. Whether they say yes or no, most guys keep trying, or at least stay present in some way. That's the usual pattern. Even after a rejection, the guy typically keeps her in his orbit. A like here, a message there, some kind of presence. And even though she said no, that little bit of attention still gives her a sense of control. But silence? That's different. When a man disappears completely, no words, no reactions, no trace, it creates a gap she didn't expect. Suddenly, you become the one who seems emotionally unavailable. And in her world, that feels personal. Even if she was the one who pulled back first, your silence starts to feel like you're the one rejecting her now. Not with words, but with your absence. That kind of rejection hits differently, because it wasn't her decision. She didn't get to control it. And people don't like losing control over how a story ends. What's more interesting is how quickly silence turns into discomfort. She starts wondering if she misjudged your intentions. She questions if you really liked her at all. She might even feel like you've moved on too easily, which, ironically, makes her feel discarded. And that's where the emotions start to turn. Because now, it's not about whether she wanted you or not. It becomes about whether you cared enough to stick around. That shift doesn't just poke at her pride, it stings her emotionally, even if she doesn't show it. She may not admit it. She may act unbothered. But silence speaks. And the message it sends is this: I'm not chasing, and I don't need your approval to walk away. That level of detachment can feel cold to someone who expected warmth, even after rejection. What you're doing, without saying a word, is showing emotional discipline. And for a woman who expected emotional validation, that feels like rejection, even if she never truly wanted something with you in the first place. In the end, your silence creates a contrast she didn't prepare for. It removes her from the center of your attention, and that shift, from being the one in control to being completely ignored, can be more painful than the original no she gave you. Because deep down, silence says, I've closed the door. And that's a language the ego doesn't like to hear. 4. She starts questioning her decision. At first, she might have felt sure about her choice. Maybe she thought you were nice, but not her type. Maybe she figured rejecting you wouldn't matter, because you'd still hang around. But once you disappear, that confidence starts to shift, and it shifts fast. Suddenly, there's no reaction from you, no follow-up, no effort to change her mind. And now, she's not just sitting with her decision, she's questioning it. Not because she's fallen for you out of nowhere, but because your silence leaves space for doubt to creep in. You have to understand something. A lot of women make decisions in the moment based on how they feel, not necessarily on long-term clarity. That means rejection isn't always final. Sometimes it's impulsive. Sometimes it's influenced by mood, timing, or assumptions. But once you're gone, truly gone, she no longer has access to you. And now she's stuck wondering if she got it wrong. When you're no longer in the picture, you're not making noise, not reacting, not fighting for a second chance. That makes her second guess herself. Was he actually high value? Did I overlook something? Why isn't he even trying? Those quiet questions hit hard, especially when she expected you to stick around. This isn't about manipulation, it's about reality. People don't like uncertainty, especially when they thought they had the upper hand. And when you vanish after rejection, you create exactly that, uncertainty. You don't give her a chance to feel validated or reassured. Instead, you make her live with her choice. And that choice suddenly becomes uncomfortable. She starts mentally replaying the interaction. She wonders if she was too harsh. She thinks about how confident you seemed and how effortlessly you walked away. She starts seeing you in a different light, not because you tried to change her mind, but because you didn't. That silence forces her to confront something she didn't expect, that she might have underestimated you. And that's where the doubt grows. Not because you proved her wrong, but because you left her alone with her own thoughts long enough for her to start questioning everything. That's the beauty of walking away with strength. It doesn't scream for attention. It makes people reflect. And for a woman who thought she had the final say, that reflection can hit harder than any words you could have spoken. She's no longer in control of how the story ends. You are. Because you didn't fight to stay, you left her with the weight of her own decision. And that silence, it's starting to feel heavier by the day. 5. Now you're the mystery. Something unexpected happens when a man goes silent after rejection. He becomes the unknown. The predictable guy disappears, and suddenly she's left trying to figure out who you really are. You've gone from just another interested guy to the one who walked away without looking back. And that shift turns you into a mystery. Let's be real. Women are drawn to curiosity. They're used to knowing how the story plays out, especially when they're the ones in control. When a woman turns a man down, she usually thinks she knows how he'll respond. He'll try again. He'll wait around. He'll keep showing interest. But when you don't, when you vanish like you were never emotionally attached in the first place, that changes everything. You become unpredictable. And unpredictability is power. She doesn't know what you're thinking. She doesn't know if you were actually serious or just testing the waters. She doesn't know if you've moved on or if you were never that into her to begin with. And that not knowing creates mental tension. It keeps her attention, not because you're trying, but because you're not. Now, her mind is doing the chasing. Here's how this looks in real life. Let's say she rejected you politely. You handled it with confidence, didn't beg, didn't get bitter, just nodded, said cool, and dipped. Days go by, and she hears nothing from you. You don't reach out. You don't lurk on her stories. You don't drop little hints that you're still hoping for a second chance. Instead, you go dark, calm, focused elsewhere. That silence becomes loud. She starts wondering, did I misread him? Maybe he wasn't into me after all? Why is he so okay with me saying no? Now she's thinking about you, not because you pushed, but because you vanished. You've become the unknown variable, and that's more interesting than anything you could have said. And here's the wild part. You didn't do it to manipulate her. You just refused to chase what wasn't choosing you. That alone is rare. And when something is rare, it becomes valuable. Her mind naturally wants to understand what she can't define. So while you're moving on, leveling up, and staying silent, she's doing the exact opposite. She's stuck trying to figure you out. In her world, that's power you now hold, not because you played games, but because you chose self-respect over attention. And that decision? That's what makes you the mystery she didn't see coming. 6. She checks if you still care, quietly. When you disappear after she rejects you, something sneaky happens behind the scenes. She's no longer getting your attention, but that doesn't mean she's completely over it. In fact, she might start checking to see if you still care, and she'll do it in the quietest ways possible. Here's the thing. Even though she rejected you, the human side of her still craves that attention. It's not about wanting you back immediately, but more about needing to feel wanted. And when you stop reaching out, when you stop engaging, it leaves a question in her mind. Does he still care? Did I really matter? She's going to test this quietly. She's not going to ask you directly or make it obvious. Instead, she might casually check your social media, see if you're still active, or watch your stories without commenting. She might even casually bring you up in conversation with mutual friends to gauge your reaction. This is a subtle move. It's her way of getting a sense of where you stand without putting herself in a vulnerable position. The reason? She's trying to see if you still care about her on a deeper level. She wants to know if your interest was real or if you were just playing the game like everyone else. Why does she do this? Because your silence has put her in a place where she feels unsure. Normally, she's used to being the one who controls the pace. She's used to deciding when and how much attention she gets. But now, you're the one who's taking control. You're the one who's distant. And that confuses her. It also makes her feel like she's lost some power, so she needs reassurance. She needs to know that she's still on your radar, even if she doesn't want to admit it. When you don't chase or react, you flip the script. She thought she'd have the power in this situation. She thought you'd keep trying to win her over. But when you don't, she's left wondering, is he still thinking about me? So, she checks. But she won't make it obvious. This kind of checking is low-key, silent, indirect, almost like a little test. And while it might seem small, it speaks volumes to her. It shows her that your silence isn't because you've forgotten about her. It's because you've moved on. And that's a reality she has to face now. You're no longer the one reaching out. Instead, she's the one quietly trying to figure out if you're still interested. This shift? It's uncomfortable for her. It reminds her that maybe, just maybe, she's the one who's lost control. And in that quiet check, she feels the power slipping from her hands and into yours. 7. You gain the power. Let's get real here. When you disappear after rejection, you don't just move on emotionally. You actually gain something more valuable than you realize. And that's the power she thought she had over you. But here's the kicker. Too many men don't realize their own power until it's too late. What do I mean by that? Most guys think that the path to a woman's heart is through persistence. They think that chasing after her, begging for her attention, or constantly showing that they're still into her will somehow win her over. It's not true. And the sooner you wake up to this fact, the better. When you just let go, when you stop trying to win her approval and instead focus on your own life, your own growth, and your own purpose, that's when you shift the dynamic. That's when you go from being a guy who's constantly seeking validation to the one who is now respected and admired, whether she admits it or not. You've got to realize something. Women love a challenge. When you stop chasing her and give her the space to come to you, that's when you stop being predictable. That's when you stop playing the game by her rules and start playing by your own. But here's where most men mess up. They wait until after the rejection to wake up. They chase, they beg, they act desperate, and then they finally get the hint that it's not working. They only realize the power of walking away once they've already lost their dignity in the process. If you're that guy, if you've been clinging onto her every move, hoping that your persistence will eventually pay off, wake up. Your self-respect is more important than being in her orbit. When you start walking away from things that don't serve you, you automatically create an aura of power and confidence. That's the type of energy women respect. But the moment you chase her after she rejects you, you hand over your power. You make it clear that her opinion is more important than your own. And that's not how a high-value man operates. Now, if you're still stuck in that cycle, constantly seeking validation from her, hoping she'll come around, you need to change that mindset. Stop asking for her approval. Stop trying to prove you're worthy of her. When you let go, when you stop chasing, when you go silent, you start respecting yourself more. And when you respect yourself more, you become the one she wishes she could have kept around. You gain the power she thought she had because you're no longer focused on getting her attention. You're focused on yourself. That shift in energy is what gives you the upper hand. So here's the bottom line. Stop chasing her. Start chasing your own life. The power you seek isn't in her hands. It's in yours. Own it. Let's end the conversation with this. If you keep chasing women after rejection, you're never going to get the respect you think you deserve. That's not to say you won't get attention, but the kind of attention that's earned through genuine self-respect, independence, and confidence, that's what you're missing. It's simple, really. When you put yourself first, when you stop begging for validation and instead start living your life for you, that's when you start commanding respect. But here's the kicker. Most men won't ever get there because they're too focused on trying to win her over. Chasing her will make you lose. The moment you realize that, you've unlocked a power most men will never know. Now, I want to hear from you. I want to know about your experiences with rejection and what happened when you stopped chasing. Drop a comment below and share how you handled the silence. Did it make her chase you, or did she completely disappear? Let's start a real conversation. I'll be responding to comments and connecting with you, because I believe in helping men grow, learn, and step into their true power. You're not alone in this. The path to self-respect isn't easy, but it's worth it, and I'm here to help guide you through it. So drop your thoughts below. I'm listening.